so much, Jennie Mustafa Julach. I love saying your name like that. I know you hate that.
That's not how you say my name, in case you're wondering.
I know that's not how you say it, but yes, thank you so much for those of you who have joined us. And today we are going to tackle a few things. Number one, we're going to introduce who this lovely lady is, Coach Jennie, aka the Audacity Coach, aka the Blab Queen. And two things: how to choose the best platform for your business goals, and two, yes, she's the Blab Queen, but she has left Blab, guys, officially, and she's now using this platform. I call it Huzzah. She calls it Huzzah, and we'll be going back and forth about it. But yes, Jennie and I have been friends since like 2010, I believe, and it's been quite a journey. She's actually been my first ever video client, in regards to helping them create videos that market themselves and make money online, but also to conquer their shyness and major fear of the camera. One way, if you guys really want to know a great tip, is just spend literally 8 hours to 9 hours in a day, and you should be good after that. Just create 13 videos in a day and you'll be good, because that's exactly what we did. All right. Oh, Ross says, I have the right pronunciation. So, Jennie, I got it right.
No, Ross, don't even try, because even the founders, Justin and Nick, said, we don't care how you say it. We think it's fun that people are having problems with it. The co-founders, thank you. The co-founders, they were calling it Huzzah. I call it Huzzah. It doesn't actually matter. It's kind of fun that it's something to get our panties in a twist about. Makes me happy.
Yes. All right. So welcome, Jennie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
All right. So first things first, tell us a little about yourself. Even though I've given you an introduction, tell us who you are and whatever you want people to know about you.
Sure. So I'm Jennie Mustafa Julach. Just call me Coach Jennie, because that's ridiculous. Not Mustafa Julach or whatever you say. Which I don't even understand. And I am the Audacity Coach. I work with people who are on the brink of something spectacular, but they're sabotaging their efforts to make it happen. I help them move that self-sabotage out of the way and make excellent, amazing things happen. And I'm on a mission to instigate as much audacity in the world as I possibly can, one human at a time. I am also the upcoming author of a book called Hilda. Hilda being your inner critic who lives in the back of your brain, who tells you you suck. We're going to figure out how to silence that defeatist monster in your brain and get on with the things that are really important to you. And lastly, I'm a big fan of Monique Johnson. And so I couldn't say no when you asked me to be here. For the record, I do not call myself the Queen of Blab. A lot of my community members do. And
I
did. A lot of people, I know, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of people in Blab who call themselves the Queen of Blab. So there can only be one queen, unless this is like Game of Thrones, where there's like 6 queens or whatever.
Yes, several kingdoms. By the way, that last episode was
right?
Crazy. Anyway,
yeah, we talk about it tomorrow on Huzzah.
Yeah. Okay, so, and also I want to let you guys know, it's Jennie is the reason who brought Huzzah to my attention and pretty much kind of gave me like a one-on-one on it. And when she told me she was leaving Blab, I was like, I felt like the world was coming to the end, because Jennie has been on Blab consistently back to back since when? Exactly. August. Okay. So, I mean, she's done a lot, and that's going to be what we're going to tackle right now. So, Jennie, one, why did you decide to start using live streaming, and why did you decide to use Blab?
So I decided to use live streaming within a month of moving to Los Angeles. So I've spent my entire life and career on the East Coast. I've always lived in the Eastern time zone until just about a year ago to the date. We moved here June 30th last year. And when we moved across the country, we knew nobody within 2,000 miles of us. And so all of the strategies I was using in place in New York City, where I was doing a lot of in-person workshops, live co-working events, um, live activities, that wasn't going to work now that I was in a community where I knew one other human, the person I'm married to. So I needed to come up with some new ideas and new ways to look at that. And I was really paying attention to how could I replicate the live experiences I was doing in New York online. And now one of the ways I've been doing that for a few years is a Facebook group. But live streaming was becoming a hot thing last summer. We had Periscope and Blab and Meerkat and all these different things coming online all about the same time. And I like to be on the cutting edge, maybe even the bleeding edge of technology. So I was curious and I started poking around. On the same exact day, I tried out Periscope and Blab, which is a really bad idea because I was comparing them, and it's apples and bowling balls. But I was comparing them and I decided, yeah, Periscope, I get to talk and ironically blab all the time. Whereas on Blab, I got to shut up and listen. And it was a place where I was able to really recreate those in-person experiences to the best of my ability across not just the people I already knew, but also connecting with people I didn't know yet. So that's why I decided to embrace Blab. It was just the right time, right place, right needs, right goals.
Gotcha. So, and do you think it's because Blab was more of a platform that included more people versus, the fact that Periscope was just you on the screen? Is that what
one to many is not my, as everybody saw at the beginning of this video, one to many is not my forte. I can be goofy for a couple minutes, but I can't actually, I don't do my best work one to many.
Okay.
I do my best work and I best demonstrate what it is I do as a coach and as a thought leader in a discussion forum, in at least a 2-part discussion, and better yet, in a group discussion format. So that's why Blab beat Periscope or any of the other one-to-many platforms immediately, because it gave me the opportunity to pose a question and again, shut up and listen, not just pontificate.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's have you think back into the early days in August when you just got started with Blab, and what were some of the first things that you tried that you think really helped in regards to you gaining traction on that platform?
I did 2 different things. I wanted to be the first thing I did was I approached it as an experiment.
Okay.
One of the things I see a lot of people making the mistake of when they're adopting live streaming or any other strategy for marketing their business and putting themselves out there is they strategize it to death instead of just getting it out there.
Right.
The moment I fell in love with Blab, I was like, ooh, this is fun. Let me play with it. The next day, I was like, okay, here's how I'm going to experiment with this bad boy. Here's how I'm going to start scheduling these things. So the 2 different kinds of experiments I wanted to test, kind of A/B test, was one, a content-driven discussion format, and the other was an interview format. And so I put both together. I did the Audacity Lab Blabs, because that's the name of my community. I love that it rhymes. So I started these Audacity Lab Blabs where I was taking the kinds of conversations we were having in a Facebook group via text and turning it into a live discussion of me and up to 3 other people at a time. The other thing that I did that didn't work as well was the interview-based platform. And there I did a series called Level Up with Coach Jennie, and I asked the same kinds of questions to a lot of different people. I did 26 of those interviews every Tuesday and Thursday for 4 months. RM, she's like, that was fun. Yeah, RM was one of the people. You were one of the people, Monique. And it was fun, but it didn't really gain traction in terms of followership. The folks that came, it was kind of like you came because you already knew that person, and hopefully it was useful for the person I was interviewing. It was nice, but it didn't really gain the traction that the discussion-based conversations gained traction of.
Gotcha. And I think that's a great point. The fact that you approached it as an experiment And like you said, I think a lot of entrepreneurs or just people in general, when they have a great idea, they end up getting like this paralysis analysis because they're not taking action. And it's better off that you actually do something and you can tweak it along the way versus trying to make it perfect. And
Well,
so,
yeah, so two things there. I mean, one is the idea better done than perfect. You hear me say that
yes.
in the coaching all the time. But the
Mhm.
second thing is, I like to think one of my colleagues, Cynthia, taught me this. You think about Oprah and her charming years. Think about
Mhm.
Oprah in the mid 80s and oh, that hair. Oh,
Mhm.
you know that
It was
Oprah looks
like,
back at those interviews that were very Donahue-like and
uh-huh.
just miserable, and her hair was bad, her questions were lame. Those were her charming years, and she probably looks back at those with like a tinge of embarrassment and yet a sense of pride of look how far I've come. You
Right.
have to be willing to have charming years. So if you go back and you watch some of my first broadcasts in September, I'm a little stilted. I'm not terribly comfortable. I'm screwing around with the chat and the functions and the buttons. It's a little bit of a challenge. So I've gotten a lot stronger at that because I got over that. I think too many people try to skip the charming years and try to be
Mhm.
polished out the gate. And those can be the same people who right now are like, I am now ready to start a Blab show. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I look at the initial videos I created on YouTube and I'm like, oh my goodness. But you have to go through that.
You do.
There's no way to really be good. You have to go through that. You have to go through the growing pains. So since you approached it as an experiment, what did you use or what factors did you determine to say, okay, I'm going to stick with this specific strategy versus not? Like, for instance, you said you started off with the interview, you saw that you weren't getting enough followership. Like, did you have a set number or you were just looking to see, okay, I'm just getting the same amount of people on there? Or what did you use to determine, okay, I'm going to use this versus not?
Mm-hmm. Good question. One was the amount of time somebody would stay engaged. So
Mm-hmm.
I paid attention. These are not hard metrics. Blab didn't hand us hard metrics of numbers of minutes people stayed on, but I would pay attention to how long people would stay engaged in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the discussion-based conversations, as I would say, okay, we're finishing up. Let's go ahead and turn off the recording. I turn off the recording and more than half of the people would stay wanting to continue the discussion, then I knew I was hitting the right notes. And anytime that happened, I paid attention and tried to deconstruct what about that discussion worked. Was it who hopped in the seats? Was it the questions I asked? Was it the topic that we were talking about? And pay attention to that. So that was one way that I paid attention. Another one is, did people join my community? My call
Mm-hmm.
to action for absolutely every one of my Blabs last fall was please join the Audacity Lab. So whenever I would finish one, you could see very directly I'd have a pile of people waiting to be approved in my Facebook community. And that was really wonderful. For the first time ever, it went from having a newbie alert once in a while to having
Mm-hmm.
a daily newbie alert of 4, 5, 6 people joining the Audacity Lab every day because they had the opportunity to kind of see me in action and decide that they want to be a part of it. So those were the two main drivers. But the third one, let's be real, was money. When I would watch and see who had attended what and who was investing in my programs, who was signing up for cathartic shove sessions, who was asking about coaching, who was buying my ebooks, stuff like that. There was a very direct link, and it's very easy to see somebody's name and then go back to the replay and see which replays they participated in to figure out what content to double down on and what content to let go of.
Gotcha. Okay. Uh, and the next thing I want to talk about is, okay, if anyone has attended Jennie's Blabs, you'll see the plethora of content that she has. I think to some extent you have themes for specific days. And I want to talk about, for someone who's just getting started, because you have a lot of content, how did you go about coming up with your topics and or themes? Or how would you suggest someone organize their content in similar way that you have done so?
Okay, so here's the peek behind the curtain of how I do it. I select a topic based on a question I've already asked in my Facebook group that had traction. If I
Okay.
asked a question and 21 people responded within a couple of days,
Mm-hmm.
I've hit an emotional target. So that's one thing, is I would pay attention to what that is. The second thing I would do is make sure I would write a pithy title that captures attention, that would kind of wake you up and shake you by the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And then make sure my subtitle had either a how to or a why to in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That signifies that this isn't just going to be a pithy discussion that's nice. It says, here's the promise, here's the actionable piece of information you're going to get in this talk. Mm-hmm. So again, I would go and say there was a conversation about Hilda, my favorite topic right now, right? The inner critic. And somebody would talk about Hilda, and I had posted something in the lab, and that conversation caught fire. For mm-hmm. example, Hilda can convince you have too much confidence, agree or disagree. And if a lot of people talked about that too much confidence thing, I'd be like, I hit an emotional target. We need to make a blab about that. So we would move it over and say, okay, how can I turn that into a discussion with the promise of actionable content, something you can do at the end of this. And so that's what I would add, that how to or why to. It really is game changing. Now in Blab, we had 80 characters. That was it. You had 80 characters total to get your branding, your title, your subtitle, everything in there. Mm-hmm. And that was a challenge too. Here on Huzzah, we have a little more flexibility. So it was also a little bit of wordsmithing.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because I've always wanted to know, because I kid you not, guys, if you're in her group, I feel like on every Sunday you get like all these notifications of the new, of the new topics that Jennie is tackling. And I feel like as a result, I think, how do you feel as in regards to sticking to a specific schedule, being consistent? How has that helped you grow your community on Blab?
Okay. So here's where I divulge for most people. I would highly recommend, if it fits your life and your business, to pick a time and stick with it. I don't do that. So do as I say, not as I do. The folks that have been extraordinarily successful on these kinds of platforms have a daily show at 10 a.m. or they have a daily show at 2 p.m. or whatever it is, or they have a weekly show at 7 p.m. Tuesdays, like Ross does, whatever. I don't have that. And here's why. It was a very deliberate decision, and it continues today. The way I calendar myself as a coach is my client get first dibs, and then I schedule around that. So I have decided to make sure that's a thing. And I'm being consistent with that. With the exception of now I have a new show that I'm doing over here that is going to incorporate my clients. So I'm blocking that 10 a.m. Pacific time on Thursdays for co-created events with clients. My other days, I schedule it based on what makes sense now that my clients have already taken the times that they need first. So I know that's opposite of how most people think, but I'm so client first, marketing second. I think that's really important, which is why on Sunday you get a huge cacophony of here goes Coach Jennie and all of her notifications of the things she's doing this week, because by Sunday my clients have filled up they've plotted out when they're meeting with me this week.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So how have you gone about when you were just starting out and you started gaining traction? How have you gone about getting the word out about your blabs? I know you have, we've discussed the fact that you had a Facebook group, which you've built over the years to a nice amount of people. But in general, what was your marketing plan or strategy in regards to getting the word out about, Coach Jennie, and making sure people come either and share, so, getting the referrals out there, word of mouth, and also to just join in general for the newbies?
Two things. One, I'm relentlessly helpful. And what I mean by that is I don't only market my stuff constantly in your face without showing up for other people. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the ways that you saw me on Blab, and the reason there are a bunch of people here who know me on Blab, isn't because they came to a Coach Jennie event, because I went to theirs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I met them as
Okay.
somebody else, and I connected with other people, and I showed genuine interest. I want to be really clear. I'm not faking this. This isn't some kind of made up thing. If you have to fake it, don't do it. This is a bad strategy for you. But if you can be genuinely, relentlessly helpful and come from that place where you're showing up, you're hopping in the seats of a discussion that you can contribute in without blab jacking, as we called it, right? If you can participate, show up, say yes when people ask you if you can be interviewed, is, and just really be helpful and friendly and supportive of the community, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be interested in what you're doing, and they're going to have nothing but nice things to say about you. So that really helps. So that's one thing. The second way is the way I would promote anything. I promote it on Facebook and Twitter and the social media channels. I put it in my list with my weekly community calendar so that an email goes out to my list telling them where I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I invite specific people. Kind of a quick hack for that is, hey, and you've seen this, Monique, as one of my people. Hey, I'm doing a Blab in 2 weeks that I'm scheduling. You'll see it coming soon. You have to be there because that topic, I really want you to share about this, that, and the other thing. So I'll also invite certain people who I know can really contribute to those different conversations. Pardon me, and that helps too. So those are kind of the general ways. One way that has been successful for me is also creating Facebook events, which is kind of a time consumer, but the reason that works really well is people can then export it to their calendar and then they don't forget about it. So I create a Facebook event in my community specifically. I don't just invite all my friends, but in my community where people have opted in to be a part of, I create a Facebook event for each and everything, including what we're doing right now. I created a Facebook event for this so that the link is right inside there and people don't have to just remember to stumble upon it.
Awesome. I really, really like the first part of the whole idea of providing value, but the whole idea of being relentlessly helpful. Now, how would you say that, how did you get acclimated with the Blab culture, right? So you were relentlessly being helpful, going to other people's Blabs and contributing and helping in any way. But would you say that's one way on how you got acclimated with the Blab culture? Because, each social media platform or each live streaming video platform has its own culture. So how did you go about getting acclimated with everything?
It's a good question, because I think there's about half of that community who would say that, oh yeah, we like that Coach Jennie, and the other half that would say the exact opposite. Because I am a acquired taste, and that's fine. But one of the ways I do that is to just authentically show up to the places where I feel like this is where I belong, and get the hell out of the places where I don't. There's a lot of different conversations within the Blab community I don't belong in. I am not going to agree. And if I'm just there to disagree, if I'm just there to share my opinions or to be a know-it-all or any of that, that's not a good use of my time, and it actually derails those people. So part of being relentlessly helpful is also shutting up and knowing when to shut up and get out, because you don't belong there. I think that's really key, and I wish a lot more people did it. I don't know how to say that more politely. The other thing to get acclimated to the Blab culture specifically is to not ignore the chat. To not, one of the things that I think really hurts people when they choose platforms like this one is knowing how to look at the chat, participate in the chat, participate and be completely present, and figuring out how to have 7 different sets of eyes. It is very hard, and it's a skill. I think one of the ways to do it well is to not explain it. One of the things I see people making the mistake of, and the Blabs, let me say it a better way. The Blabs I prefer to listen to are the ones where that feels seamless. the Blabs I hate listening to are like, oh, you guys, I haven't looked at the chat in a while. Let me look at the chat because I've forgotten about you. I'm really sorry. And they like constantly explaining all of that. You know, I can't see everything, but just saying sweet to what Ross said a little bit ago without giving that voice in the moment and being able to dance between the two, it takes some practice. But I think that's very important.
Right.
I hope that answered your question, Mo.
No, it did. It did. It actually drummed up a few other questions. So hold on, bear with me for a second. So based on the culture and based on your goals and what you wanted to accomplish, how did you go about conducting your blabs? Like, for instance, for those of you who are not familiar with her, like she actually used her own colloquialisms of like being in the seats and kind of making equivalent references to, I guess, being in the movies or anything in the film industry. So if you could describe, just for those of you who are not familiar with Coach Jennie or, you know, the Blab, as to how you went about using your own, using your own language. Did that help, you think, in regards to people becoming loyal to you?
Big time, because those little colloquialisms make it memorable. Okay, so what she's talking about, and to be clear, part of it is being, I mean, to be authentically me is to be an out lesbian with a little bit of a potty mouth, who likes to point out the ridiculousness in life because life just doesn't need to be so serious, right? So part of that is, as a lesbian, I happen to love the theater, which really makes me more of a gay man, but whatever. And so I wanted to create like a theater reference. So we have the box seats and we have the cheap seats, you know what I mean? And we kind of played with that language. And the first few times I said cheap seats to describe the chat feature, it kind of takes away the technology of it. It kind of pokes fun a little bit. And frankly, it created this language to say, like, when are you going to get into one of my box seats? When are you going to come out of the cheap seats and get in the box seats? It created this kind of, I know it's so small and silly, but it is quite funny. And then I would see happening is I would show up in other people's blabs and they would say, oh, would you like to get in, as Coach Jennie calls it, the box seats? And so I became memorable by using that kind of language. Now, it turned off some people, but that's okay. You know, the people that are going to be turned off by that goofiness, they're not going to hire me. And so I'm perfectly happy with adding to that thing. I mean, the other things that we did was we found ways to take some pop culture references and bring them onto Blab. One of the people I met on Blab, Karen Graves, she and I decided to take a page from Seinfeld and start something called the Blab About Nothing. Which just seems silly. It was an off the record, let's have a chat about absolutely nothing and see what happens. And then we found that many other people were doing that. They were also having blabs about nothing. Now, we could care less, but why not make a fake controversy about that and rename ours the original Blab About Nothing with a hashtag and everything, right? And it adds to this kind of silliness and playfulness that is really fun. The other thing that I'm really successful at doing, and I don't know why anybody lets me get away with it, is I like to make fun of people. I like it when people make fun of me. I like to do really bad impressions of people. I like to give people nicknames like Ass Hat, you know who he is. And they think it's funny because it really is meant with love, and being able to kind of create that's what it's like to be my friend. As you know, like if you're in my personal life, that's what it's like. You're going to get a nickname. It's part of my world. So I'm me all the way through and through. And I think that matters. Now, one of the things, I'm going all over the place, Monique, but one of the things that I do see as a challenge is, oh, Laura, you have a nickname. Don't worry. One of the things I do see as a challenge is people who don't have a boisterous personality struggle to really catch fire on these kinds of platforms. And I totally understand that that's a real, true challenge. But people with less boisterous personalities are going to do better with the one-to-many, more rehearsed style. And I don't. So, yeah. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's very helpful. So another thing is, gosh, I had a really good question and it slipped my mind. But okay, let's fast forward a little bit. So in regards to Blab, another part of the culture is the when they uh introduce the whole thumbnails and things like that. And so, oh, that's my question. I'm sorry, guys. What would you say were some major tips that you did to help distinguish yourself from someone else? Even though, yes, your personality and everything, and we cover that and your colloquialisms and everything, but for those who are just starting, and this can apply to any live streaming platform, but let's just talk about your experience. Like, what types of things were you thinking about in order to make yourself stand out and distinguish yourself from someone else?
Okay, so one way that I stood out is I was on Blab 4 to 7 times a week.
Mm.
A lot of people decide that they're going to be a big deal on a platform like that, and they're going to show up once a week. And that just doesn't work. So I was actually showing up and hosting events between 4 and 7 times a week. Now that sounds insane, until you realize that it was at a time more than doubling my business. So I really had the opportunity to, I struck while the iron was hot, or whatever the heck that idiom is, because I was able to really dramatically grow my community. I was selling programs. I was doing information sessions on programs. And because I was offering so much free content and free opportunities, as well as having silly off the record conversations about nothing and on the record conversation about Games of Thrones, and we were talking about all these different kinds of things, you were able to eventually, most of my community was able to peek into 1 or 2 of those events a week. And then I got a few like hardcore people that were following me around all the time and getting exhausted. They're like, Jennie, I can't spend 8 hours a week with you. I don't expect you to. The idea of this is I want to be available at those different times. So that's one thing. Another thing is recognizing that for me in my business, I have a worldwide business. I have clients in Paris, clients in Tel Aviv, clients in the Philippines, and then of course clients across the continental US and Canada. With that in mind, I have one of those crazy clocks I need to deal with. If I ever want the 3 folks I have in the Philippines to participate, I can't have all of my shows in the middle of the day in California. If I want them to be able to have access to me, I need to create opportunities for them to participate, which pisses off all of the East Coasters who want to be in bed by then. So I need to make sure I'm playing around with those different times so that I can serve the people that already exist in my community, because those are the people who are going to find the next people that need to exist in my community.
Love it. Love it. So this is a great segue. Since you mentioned the whole idea of selling products, services, and conducting information services, can you give us an idea as to, I guess, one of the pipelines that you've created using Blab to help you sell a product or a service that you have?
Yep. So I've sold primarily to